The late afternoon brought a golden light to the streets of New York. Claire walked slowly toward the cafe, where she had agreed to meet Ethan. Her heart beat faster than usual, but it wasn't fear. It was the feeling of taking an important step, with caution and courage. When she entered the cafe, she found Ethan sitting near the window, a book in his hands and a cup beside him. As soon as he saw her, he stood up with a welcoming smile. "I thought you were going to stand me up." A soft laugh escaped her, easing the tension that still lingered. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a mess." Ethan pulled out a chair for her to sit, and then returned to his place. The conversation started light, as it always did between them. They talked about everyday things, funny memories, small passions, and stories of daily life. Talking to him was easy. Nothing was forced. Everything flowed like a breeze. "Have you always liked cooking? Or did you discover it after living alone?" The question came with genuine curiosity. Claire smiled, recalling mornings with Sophie. "I started out of necessity, but I eventually discovered that cooking brings me peace. Every recipe feels like a small challenge that makes me feel capable." He nodded, admiring her response. "Sometimes the small details are the ones that define us the most, don't you think?" The words touched something inside her. For a moment, she felt that Ethan saw something beyond what she allowed to show. A rare, sweet, and comfortable feeling. After the coffee, Ethan suggested a walk through the park. Autumn had painted the trees with shades of orange and gold, and the sound of dry leaves underfoot brought a peace Claire hadn't felt in a long time. She stopped, looking up at the darkening sky where the first stars began to appear. "Ethan, I need to tell you something." He stopped too, turning to her with his usual gentle gaze. "Of course. What is it?" Claire took a deep breath, carefully choosing her words. "I had a complicated relationship, a marriage that hurt me deeply, and now I'm more cautious, especially when it comes to my daughter." His silence wasn't one of judgment but of respect. "I just want you to know that if I'm here, it's because I feel it's worth it. But I need to take things slow, and protecting Sophie is my priority." Ethan smiled softly, taking a step closer. "I admire your honesty, and I respect you the time you need, the decisions you make. None of that scares me." His words were like a bomb. For the first time in a long while, someone wasn't pressuring her, wasn't judging her, just understanding her. "I'm here because I want to be. No rush, no expectations. Just because I like you." Claire felt tears threaten to surface, but she held them back. A shy smile appeared in response. "Thank you for understanding." They continued walking side by side. Neither felt the need to fill the silence. It was a comfortable silence, full of meaning. Later, back at the apartment, Claire sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. Sophie was asleep in the room next door, and the apartment was quiet. Her phone vibrated. When she looked at the screen, her heart raced. "Adam." She took a deep breath before answering. "I heard you've been seeing another man. Is it true?" Closing her eyes for a moment, Claire kept her voice calm. "Adam, that's none of your business." The response came loaded with anger. "Of course it is. I have the right to know who's around my daughter. Do you think he'll be better than me? Do you think he really cares?" The old fear tried to return, but she refused to give in. "You no longer have control over me. My choices are not your problem." The silence lasted a few seconds before a veiled threat followed. "You'll regret this, Claire." She hung up and stood still, feeling her body tremble. For an instant, the past tried to pull her back. But then she thought of Ethan, of his kind words, his respectful gaze, and the fear lost its power. She walked to Sophie's room and found her sleeping, her face serene under the blanket. "I'm doing the right thing, and no one will take this from us." Before going to bed, Claire picked up her journal and wrote, "Today I took a new step. For the first time, someone looked at me without expecting anything in return. Ethan doesn't try to fix me or save me. He simply sees me. Adam still tries to pull me back, but I am no longer the woman he controlled. I am strong. I am free. And now, I'm allowing myself to live again. She closed the journal and looked out the window. The city lights sparkled, but within her, what shone was the certainty that she was on the right path. Slowly but surely, I'm starting over. The morning was calm. Claire had just dropped Sophie off at school and felt her heart light after a serene weekend. Sitting at the table with a warm cup of coffee, she was reviewing her day's agenda when her phone vibrated. A message. Adam's name appeared on the screen. "We need to talk." "It's about Sophie." The familiar tightness in her chest returned, but she took a deep breath. If it was truly important, he could wait. Minutes later, the phone buzzed again. "I can't believe you're putting our daughter at risk because of your selfishness. You know what I'm talking about." Claire closed her eyes, gripping the phone tightly in her hands. His words still had the power to hurt her, even though she knew they weren't true. Breathing deeply, she replied firmly, "If it's about Sophie, say it. Otherwise, I'm not continuing this conversation." The silence that followed seemed heavier than any words. Hours later, while she was working, an unexpected email arrived. The sender, Adam's lawyer. The subject made her heart race. Review of custody agreements. Her fingers trembled as she opened the message. There it was, a list of demands. A review of visitation schedules, and the prohibition of introducing new people into Sophie's life without his approval. Claire closed the laptop forcefully. She knew it was just an attempt to regain control, but the weight of the situation shook her. At school pickup, as Claire waited for Sophie, she spotted Adam leaning against a nearby wall, arms crossed, wearing a smile that never reached his eyes. Sophie ran toward her mother, but Adam called out to her. "Hey, princess. Daddy's here to see you." Sophie paused, looking confused at her mother, who took a deep breath before responding softly. "Today's not your daddy's visitation day, sweetheart. Let's go home now, okay?" Adam approached, keeping his voice low but charged. "Are you really willing to keep me from my daughter? There will be consequences." Claire kept her voice steady. "I'm not keeping anyone from you. Respect what was agreed upon." Taking Sophie's hand, she walked toward the car without looking back. Once inside in the back seat, Sophie asked quietly, "Is Daddy mad, Mommy?" Claire looked into the rearview mirror and smiled gently. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Don't worry." That evening, sitting in the armchair of Anna's office, Claire exhaled slowly. The calm environment, with its soft colors and dim lights, always made her feel protected. He's back to trying to manipulate me. First with messages, then with the lawyer, now threatening Sophie's custody. Anna listened in silence, her gaze steady and understanding. "How does that make you feel?" Claire's hands tightened in her lap. "Like I'm losing control again. I feel afraid he'll drag me back to who I used to be." Anna's voice was soft but full of conviction. "Adam is trying to pull you back into a toxic family pattern. He's used to having control over you, and your strength bothers him." Claire felt tears begin to form. "I just want to protect my daughter, but sometimes it feels so hard." Anna smiled slightly, leaning forward. "Claire, you've already broken the cycle. You're not that woman anymore. Every time you say no, you show Sophie what respect and self-love mean. You're changing her story." The words sank in deeply. Claire wiped her tears and nodded, breathing in slowly. "I need to keep saying no, even when he tries to scare me." "Exactly. Your strength is what defines you now, not fear." That night at home, the phone rang again. It was Ethan. His calm voice brought comfort she didn't even realize she needed. "How are you today?" There was a moment of hesitation, but she decided to be honest. "Today was hard. Adam is trying to destabilize me again." On the other end of the line, there was a pause before Ethan responded, calm and firm. "I can imagine how painful that must be. But Claire, you're not alone. He's only trying to hurt you because he sees the strength you have now. His words dissolved part of the weight she was carrying. Thank you for listening. I need that sometimes. Whenever you need me, I'm here. The silence that followed wasn't empty, but full of presence. Claire smiled, feeling a little stronger. Before bed, Claire peeked into Sophie's room, watching her daughter sleep peacefully. She approached slowly and whispered, I'm doing the right thing. No one will take this away from us. Then, sitting on her bed, she opened her journal and began to write. Today was a challenge, but also a victory. Adam tried to pull me back, but I stood firm. Ethan reminded me that my strength is visible. And Anna showed me that every no I say is a step toward building a better future for Sophie. I'm not the same woman anymore. I'm stronger than I've ever been. And slowly I'm winning. Closing the journal, Claire looked out the window. Outside, the city lights shone. But now, what shone brighter was the certainty that she was on the right path. Slowly but surely, I'm rewriting my story. The sky was covered with gray clouds on that chilly morning. Claire was making breakfast, the sound of the spatula against the pan filling the kitchen. At the table, Sophie was animatedly talking about a school project. I want to make a real volcano, Mommy, with lava and everything. Claire smiled as she placed a plate of pancakes in front of her. I think we can figure it out. Let's find the materials after school, okay? The phone buzzed on the counter, pulling her attention away. Claire glanced at the screen. It was Adam. The smile disappeared for a moment. She took a deep breath and, without a second thought, put the phone on silent. Sophie, with her watchful eyes, noticed. Was it Daddy? With a gentle smile, Claire hid the tension she felt. Yes, sweetheart. But right now it's time for our breakfast, right? Sophie smiled again, returning to her pancakes. But Claire knew Adam wouldn't give up so easily. Later, while waiting for Sophie outside school, the phone rang. This time it was Ethan. Claire's heart calmed at seeing his name on the screen. Hi, Ethan. How are you? I just wanted to know if you and Sophie would like to have dinner with me on Saturday. Nothing fancy, I promise. Claire smiled at the unexpected invitation, but hesitation came before she could answer. Across the street, Adam was standing, staring directly at her. Claire's smile disappeared. I'll call you later to figure it out, okay? Is everything all right? Yes, it's fine. We'll talk later. She quickly hung up and put the phone away. Adam, now crossing the street toward her, wore a smile Claire knew all too well, the one laced with sarcasm. Who was that? Your new boyfriend? Claire crossed her arms, maintaining her composure. That's none of your business, Adam. Of course it is. That man is near my daughter. I have the right to know who he is. Claire's voice stayed firm, but cool. He's not around Sophie. And even if he were, you don't get to decide anything. Adam's expression changed. His voice dropped lower, sharper. You think he's different, Claire? He'll leave you, just like everyone else. And when that happens, you'll realize how stupid you were. Anger burned within her, but Claire refused to let him see it. She lifted her chin and responded firmly. The only stupid thing here was letting you treat me that way for so long. Don't try to intimidate me, Adam. That doesn't work anymore. The school doors opened, interrupting their conversation. Sophie ran out, holding a paper with excitement. Mommy, I finished my drawing. Claire smiled at her daughter, took her hand, and began walking away. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Let's go home. She left Adam behind, standing there frustrated and powerless. That night, with Sophie already asleep, Claire sat on the sofa with a cup of tea in her hands. She decided to call Ethan. His calm, comforting voice brought her a sense of peace. Is everything okay? Today was complicated. Adam showed up again. He's trying to destabilize me, but I know it's just control. There was a pause before Ethan replied, his voice soft. He's trying to pull you back into the past, Claire. But you're not there anymore. You're so much stronger than he thinks. His words sank in deeply, easing part of the weight Claire carried. Thank you for saying that. I needed to hear it. I'm always here if you need me, Claire. No rush. No pressure. She smiled, feeling less alone. Thank you for being here. The call ended, but the peace it brought lingered. For the first time in a long time, Claire felt like someone was truly on her side. Someone who respected her time, her space, and her struggle. Later, sitting at the table, Claire opened her journal. The words flowed easily. Adam still tries to pull me back, but now I see who he really is. He no longer has control over me. And then there's Ethan, someone who sees me, hears me, and respects me. He doesn't try to fix me or save me. He just walks beside me. For the first time, I feel like I'm living something real. I am stronger than he thinks. Stronger than I ever believed I could be. She closed the journal and looked out the window. The stars sparkled in the dark sky, like tiny reminders that the future was within reach. I choose to move forward. For me, for Sophie, and for the life I'm building. Claire turned off the light, her heart lighter and a small smile on her lips. Adam could try to clip her wings, but she was already flying, and no one would stop her. The Sunday afternoon was sunny and fresh, with orange leaves scattered across the sidewalks announcing autumn. Claire accepted Ethan's invitation for a stroll through the city's outdoor market. At first she hesitated. Doing something so simple felt unusual, but she decided to try. Upon arriving, a new feeling settled over her calm. For years, being in public meant carrying an invisible weight, as if she were being watched, judged, or on the verge of making a mistake. But with Ethan by her side, everything felt different. He walked at her pace, told small stories, and made silly jokes that drew genuine smiles. Look at this, he teased, holding up a shiny apple. It seems apples are always crossing our path. Coincidence? Claire laughed, remembering the day she had met him at the grocery store. Maybe it's a sign. Who knows? Maybe you were born to save fruit. The two laughed together, and in that moment, she realized she was breathing easily, something she hadn't done in a long time. They stopped at a stand selling fresh flowers. Ethan naturally picked up a small bouquet of daisies and handed it to Claire. For the woman who taught me the difference between choosing an apple and choosing the life we want. She held the bouquet, surprised by his words. A different emotion surfaced, and for an instant, she felt tears gather. Good tears, one she barely recognized. Thank you, Ethan, she replied softly, for reminding me that simple things can be beautiful. On the way back home, the flowers rested on the passenger seat as Claire drove in silence. The delicate weight of the bouquet seemed to touch something dormant within her. Such a simple gesture had reached a part of her heart she thought was inaccessible. For a moment, the past threatened to invade her thoughts. Adam appeared in her memories, those years when she tried to bring lightness to their marriage, only to be met with rejection or indifference. I was so used to the weight that I forgot what lightness feels like. When she arrived home, Sophie ran to greet her with her usual enthusiasm. Mommy, those flowers are so pretty. Claire smiled, handing the small bouquet to her daughter. They're ours, sweetheart. Let's put them in a vase. Sophie followed her to the kitchen, where they arranged the flowers in the center of the table. While adjusting the vase, Sophie asked, Who gave you these flowers, Mommy? Claire paused for a second, then answered honestly with a gentle smile. A very nice friend. So he's nice like you, right? Sophie's words touched Claire deeper than the little girl could imagine. Her innocence was a reminder of how much Sophie needed to grow up surrounded by examples of real, light, and respectful love. Yes, sweetheart. He's someone very nice. Later that night, Claire sat on the couch with a warm cup of tea and her phone in her hands. She decided to call Ethan. I just wanted to say thank you for today, she began. It was a good day. On the other end, Ethan replied with his usual calm tone. I'm the one who should thank you, Claire. She hesitated for a moment, feeling the need to say more. For a long time, I believed moments like this weren't for me. I got so used to carrying too much weight that I forgot how to see beauty in the little things. Ethan listened silently, giving her the space she needed. Today, for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to be happy. And you've helped with that, without even realizing it. Claire, he said softly, you deserve these moments. Not because of me, but because of yourself. You deserve lightness. You deserve to choose what makes you happy. His words sank deeply. For the first time, Claire didn't feel afraid to hear something like that. Thank you for reminding me of that. After hanging up, Claire picked up her journal and began to write. Today was a simple day, a stroll, flowers, and laughter. But to me, it was so much more. It was a reminder that life can be light. For so long, I let the past define who I am. But now, I'm learning that love doesn't need to be heavy. Ethan showed me something I needed to see: respect, patience, and lightness. It doesn't erase what I've lived, but it shows me there's a different future. A future where I choose what makes me happy. I still carry scars, but they don't define me anymore. Today, I am more than my past. I am who I choose to be. Claire closed the journal and looked out the window. The dark sky was dotted with stars, a reminder that tomorrow would bring new possibilities. I'm ready to move forward, she whispered to herself with a light smile. One step at a time. The sunny morning carried a light unease. Claire watched Sophie playing on the living room rug, concentrating on her colorful pencils as she held a warm cup of coffee in her hands. The night before, she had spoken at length with Ethan. They had decided calmly that it was time for Sophie to meet him. Ethan, as always, had not pressured her, making it clear that he would respect her timing. Claire knew how important this decision was, but still her heart beat faster. She sat next to her daughter, smiling softly. Sweetheart, Mommy wants to tell you something. Today we're going to meet a friend of mine. He's very nice, and I'd like you to meet him. Sophie looked up, curious. A friend? Does he like to draw too? Claire's smile came easily as she gently touched her daughter's hair. Maybe. You can ask him. I think he'd love to see your drawings. Sophie paused for a moment, thoughtful, but soon smiled. Okay, Mommy. Relief swept through Claire's chest. She knew she was doing the best thing for both of them. The park was full of life that afternoon. The sun peeked through the leaves of the trees, creating dancing shadows on the ground. Children ran across the grass. Families had picnics, and the wind brought a soft breeze. Claire and Sophie walked hand in hand toward a quieter area where Ethan waited, seated on a bench with a bag beside him. When he saw them approaching, he stood up, smiling. Hi, Claire. Then, in a softer voice, he crouched down to Sophie's level. And you must be Sophie. The little girl, still holding her mother's hand, looked at him with curiosity but no shyness. Hi. Mommy says you're nice. Ethan's smile widened. I promise I am. And I hear you're an amazing artist. Her eyes lit up with surprise. I draw really well. Want to see? He nodded enthusiastically. I'd love to. Do you have something to show me? Sophie quickly opened her backpack and pulled out a slightly crumpled paper, displaying a rainbow filled with colorful flowers. Ethan looked at the drawing with genuine admiration. Wow, that's the most beautiful rainbow I've ever seen. She smiled proudly as Claire watched them in silence. Seeing Ethan interact with Sophie so naturally filled her heart with calm. He didn't try to force a connection. He was simply there, present with lightness and patience. The afternoon passed peacefully. Ethan taught Sophie how to skip stones across the water and shared snacks from the bag he had brought. They laughed together, and Claire couldn't help but smile as she watched Sophie having fun. It was all so simple yet full of meaning. As Sophie ran toward the swings, Claire sat beside Ethan on the bench. She looked at him with gratitude. Thank you for being like this, for not forcing anything. He met her gaze with that calm look she was starting to know so well. She's amazing, Claire. And you're a wonderful mother. Thank you for trusting me enough to take this step." His words touched her deeply. For so long, Claire had carried the weight of guilt and fear. Now, sitting beside Ethan, everything felt lighter. "I never thought I'd get to this point, but I'm happy to be here." Ethan gently touched her hand. "You deserve to be here. And you deserve to be happy." Claire didn't respond. She simply smiled, feeling for the first time that she believed those words. On the way home, Sophie walked cheerfully beside her, holding a dry leaf she had found on the ground. Claire's phone buzzed. It was a message from Adam. "Are you really bringing that guy into Sophie's life? You're being irresponsible. Don't be surprised when she turns against you." Her heart raced for a moment. The old fear tried to crawl back, but Claire looked at her daughter, distractedly playing with the leaf. She took a deep breath and put the phone away. She wouldn't let Adam ruin the day. Sophie looked up, smiling simply. "Mommy, Ethan's nice. He said he's going to learn how to draw with me." Claire gently squeezed her little hand. "I'm glad you liked him, sweetheart." As they walked, Claire thought of Adam. He could yell, manipulate, and try to regain control, but he had no power over her anymore. Not anymore. "I choose what's best for me and for Sophie. He can't reach us anymore." That night, after Sophie had fallen asleep, Claire sat on her bed with the journal open on her lap. She held the pen, reflecting on the day, before she began to write. Today Ethan met Sophie. It wasn't perfect because it was planned, but because it was natural. For the first time, I felt like we're building something real. Adam still tries to scare me, but his words don't affect me like they used to. I know what I'm doing. I know what's best for me and my daughter. The past cannot define my present. I choose love. I choose peace. I choose to live. She closed the journal, turned off the light, and lay down, looking out the window. The night was calm, and the stars shone silently in the sky. "I'm on the right path," she murmured to herself with a gentle smile. One step at a time. The afternoon seemed ordinary until the sound of a notification made Claire's heart beat faster. It was an email. She looked at the screen, feeling her stomach turn at the sight of the sender's name, Adam. For a moment, she thought of ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of her, and she opened the message. "Claire, I want to make it clear that you're making a mistake by bringing strangers into our daughter's life. My lawyer is preparing documents to request a custody review. If you think this boyfriend will replace the role of a father, you're very wrong. Sophie deserves better." She dropped the mouse with a heavy sigh. Panic tried to creep back in like an old enemy. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath. Anna's voice, her therapist, echoed in her mind. "He will try to manipulate your emotions, but he no longer has power over you." She picked up the phone and, without hesitation, called Megan, her lawyer. "I just received an email from Adam. He's threatening to request a custody review." On the other end of the line, Megan maintained her calm, professional tone. "Claire, he's trying to intimidate you. That's what he does when he realizes he's losing control. Save the email and forward it to me. There's nothing to fear. You're doing everything right." Claire nodded, feeling the tension start to ease. Knowing she had support made all the difference. That evening, Claire tried to relax on the couch, a warm cup of tea in her hands, when the phone rang. It was Ethan. Just seeing his name on the screen brought an involuntary smile to her face. "Your voice sounds different. Are you okay?" She hesitated for a moment, but decided to be honest. "I got an email from Adam. He's threatening to ask for custody of Sophie. Says I'm making a mistake by letting you be part of our lives." On the other end, Ethan was silent for a moment before responding firmly. "Claire, he knows you're stronger now. He's trying to hurt you because he sees he's lost control. But he can't tear you down anymore." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time, they were tears of relief. "It's so frustrating. It feels like he'll never stop." "He won't," Ethan replied softly. "But neither will you. He's fighting someone you no longer are. And Claire, you're not alone in this. The weight of the day began to dissolve. No matter how hard it was, she knew Ethan was right. Thank you for always reminding me of that. Always, Claire. Always. The next day, Claire decided Sophie needed a light day, far from the shadows Adam kept trying to cast. Ethan had invited them for a picnic in an open field outside the city. The sky was a bright blue, the wind blew gently, and for the first time in weeks, Claire felt light. Sophie ran across the grass, laughing as she tried to fly a kite with Ethan's help. Claire, sitting on the blanket spread on the ground, watched the scene with a heart full of peace. Look, Mommy, it's flying. Her daughter's excited voice made Claire smile. Ethan looked at her and, still holding the kite's line, commented gently, "She has so much energy. It's beautiful to see." Claire nodded, keeping her eyes on Sophie. She deserves moments like this. Light moments. He sat beside her, his gaze still fixed on the little girl. And so do you. You're building something beautiful, Claire. For her, but also for yourself. She looked at him for a moment, not knowing what to say. He didn't need to force anything, nor did he fill the silence with unnecessary words. He just existed there beside her. That was enough. On the way home, Claire found a message on her phone. "You can play at being a happy family, but Sophie is still my daughter. Don't forget that." She read the words calmly, refusing to let fear take hold. Adam was still trying to use the same weapons, but they no longer had the same power. Taking a deep breath, she responded, "Sophie is not an object for you to control me with, Adam. If you really care about her, you'll respect the decisions I make to protect her. I won't let you intimidate me anymore." She put the phone away and looked at Sophie through the rearview mirror, who was humming a random song carefree. "I'm no longer the woman he used to manipulate. Now I'm strong." That night, after tucking Sophie into bed, Claire sat at the kitchen table with her journal open. She picked up the pen, pausing for a moment to reflect on the day, then began to write. "Adam still tries to hurt me, but today I realized something important. He doesn't define me anymore. Fear has lost its power. He is just the echo of something that has already passed. And then there's Ethan. He shows me that lightness is possible, that love and respect can walk side by side." Today, watching Sophie run across the field, happy and free, I realized that I'm building something beautiful. Something she deserves. Something I deserve. Adam can yell, threaten, and try to destabilize me, but he's lost. I am stronger. I am free. And I choose to move forward. She closed the journal and looked out the window. The night was dark, but the stars shone brightly, like tiny reminders of hope. "I'm in control of my life," she whispered softly, with a gentle smile. "And no one can take that from me." In that moment, Claire felt that, despite the challenges, she was exactly where she needed to be. The sky was gray and heavy, as if foreshadowing what was to come. Claire was organizing documents in the living room, her cup of tea still warm beside her. Sophie played in her room, her cheerful voice breaking the silence of the house. Then the doorbell rang. Claire froze, feeling a pang of apprehension in her chest. She wasn't expecting visitors. When she opened the door, the air seemed to leave her lungs for a second. It was Adam. He stood there rigid, with that cold gaze she knew all too well. "What are you doing here? Today isn't your visitation day." Her voice came out firm but controlled. Adam stepped forward, trying to assert his presence, but Claire didn't move. "We need to talk. Now." "No. If you have something to say, speak to your lawyer." His fists clenched, and the sarcastic smile she loathed so much appeared on his face. "You're destroying everything, Claire. Bringing that little boyfriend into our daughter's life? He'll never be her father." Claire felt the anger bubble inside her, but she knew that giving in would mean handing Adam exactly what he wanted. "Stop, Adam. Sophie is my priority, and you won't manipulate me anymore. Leave." Before Adam could respond, a voice rang out behind her. "Is there a problem here?" Claire turned to find Ethan standing at the entrance of the building. He was calm, but his expression was serious and firm. Adam let out a dry laugh. "So this is him, your hero?" Ethan didn't react to the provocation, keeping his gaze steady on Adam. "I'm not here to argue. Respect Claire's space and leave." Adam looked back and forth between the two of them, as if searching for a way to cause more damage, but something in the way Claire looked at him made him step back. "This isn't over, Claire." He turned sharply and disappeared down the street. Claire let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Ethan walked up to her slowly, gently touching her arm. "Are you okay?" Claire nodded, but a single tear escaped before she could stop it. "He still tries to control me, but I'm not that woman anymore." Ethan smiled softly. "No, you're not. And he knows it." The next day, Claire sat in Anna's office, her therapist's calm space filled with soft light and a light lavender scent. Anna waited patiently while Claire gathered her thoughts. "He showed up at my house yesterday, said I'm destroying everything, that I'm a bad mother. And for a moment, I almost believed him." Anna leaned forward slightly, her eyes kind and steady. "What stopped you from believing him?" Claire was silent for a moment, searching for the answer within herself. "Because I looked at him and realized, he no longer has power over me. The control he had, the manipulation, that's in the past. He's frustrated because he can't hold me down anymore." A calm smile appeared on Anna's lips. "Exactly. You've broken the cycle, Claire. He's acting this way because he knows he's lost. But you've won." Claire felt a wave of relief, as if those words had sealed something within her. "For the first time, I really believe that." That night, Claire sat on the couch, a light blanket wrapped around her shoulders and a cup of tea in her hands. Ethan was there with her, sitting on the other end of the couch, watching her closely. "You seem different today. Lighter. What changed?" Claire smiled softly, looking at him. "I realized that Adam can't hurt me anymore. He can yell, threaten, try to manipulate me. But he's lost. For the first time, I feel like I'm in control of my life." Ethan moved a little closer, touching her hand gently. "Claire, you have no idea how inspiring that is. Watching you overcome all of this, you're incredible." Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of relief, of gratitude. "Thank you for being here. For believing in me. I believe in you because you deserve it. And I'll always be here by your side." Claire felt her heart warm, as if all the pieces were finally falling into place. For the first time in a long time, she felt that the past was truly distant. Later, with Sophie already asleep, Claire sat at the table with her journal open. She picked up the pen and began to write. Today Adam tried one last blow. His words came with the same force as always, but this time, they didn't touch me, because I know who I am. I know what I want for me and for Sophie. Adam lost, not because I won a fight, but because I chose peace. He's just a shadow of the past. And then there's Ethan, someone who's shown me that love can be light, respectful and real. He doesn't try to fix me, he just walks beside me. Sophie, my light, deserves to see a mother who is strong and free. And that's who I'm becoming. Closing the journal, Claire looked out the window. Outside, the dark sky was dotted with stars. She smiled softly and whispered to herself, I'm finally free. That night felt calmer, safer. For the first time, Claire felt that the future was truly hers. The apartment was full of laughter and energy that afternoon. Sophie ran back and forth in her bright blue dress, the skirt swirling as she jumped and twirled. The little girl chattered nonstop about the New Year's Eve party and the famous ball drop in Times Square, while Claire finished fixing her hair in the living room mirror. A light knock on the door made Sophie stop mid-dance. She looked at her mother with bright eyes. It's Ethan, she shouted, running toward the door. Claire laughed, trying to keep up with her. When she opened it, Ethan appeared with a warm smile and a bag of snacks in hand. Looks like the ladies of the house are ready for the big night. Sophie jumped for joy and held her arms out to him. You're going to put me on your shoulders so I can see everything, right? You promised. A promise is a promise. Ethan picked her up effortlessly, making her giggle loudly. Claire watched them for a moment, her heart full of warmth. How could something so simple feel so right? Are you ready to face the crowd? She asked, fastening her coat. For you too? Always, he replied, looking at Claire with a soft smile. She returned it, feeling a lightness she hadn't known in a long time. For the first time, the new year felt like a true beginning. The streets of New York were alive. Colorful lights lit up every corner. Lively music echoed between buildings, and the air was thick with excitement. Claire walked beside Ethan, holding his hand, while Sophie laughed from her perch on his shoulders, mesmerized by everything around her. Mommy, I can see everything from up here, Sophie shouted, her voice full of wonder. Claire looked at her daughter, her face glowing in the reflection of the lights around them. It was in these moments, in her smiles, that all the effort was worth it. Ethan turned his face to Claire, gently squeezing her hand. Are you happy? He murmured, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Claire paused for a second, taking it all in. The lights, the energy of the city, Sophie laughing, and Ethan right there by her side. She nodded, a genuine smile on her lips. I've never been this happy. For the first time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Ethan looked at her, his gaze filled with tenderness, and he touched her face gently. You deserve this, Claire. Every moment of peace, every smile. She felt her heart tighten, but in a good way, like a wave of gratitude enveloping her. Thank you for being here. Ethan smiled, his expression saying more than words before he turned back to Sophie. Ready for the countdown? Yes. I want to see the fireworks. So many fireworks. Sophie responded excitedly, clapping her hands. A few minutes before midnight, the atmosphere in Times Square was electric. The crowd was in unison, singing and cheering as they awaited the famous ball drop. Claire held Sophie in her arms while Ethan wrapped his arms around both of them, shielding them from the cold. Mommy, it's almost time, Sophie exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Claire looked at her daughter, then at Ethan. His expression was serene, as though he too was absorbing every detail of the moment. Thank you for letting me be a part of this, he murmured softly. Thank you for walking beside me. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Claire took a deep breath, holding back tears of emotion. 7, 6, 5. She looked at Ethan and smiled. For the first time in a long time, she felt that love could be light, safe, and true. 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. The ball dropped, and Times Square exploded with colorful lights, fireworks, and cries of celebration. Ethan leaned in gently and kissed Claire. A tender kiss, full of meaning. Claire allowed herself to feel the moment, savoring every second. Sophie, clapping her hands with energy, laughed loudly. Mommy, look. Fireworks. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. Claire hugged her tightly, her eyes glistening with tears. This is a new beginning. The past is behind us, and the future is full of possibilities. Later that night, the apartment was quiet. Sophie was fast asleep on the couch, a warm blanket draped over her shoulders. Claire and Ethan sat on the balcony, wrapped in blankets and holding cups of tea. The city still shone before them, the lights from the celebration reflecting in the sky. Claire took a deep breath, feeling the crisp early morning air. A year ago, I couldn't imagine my life being like this. Free, light, full of love. Ethan turned to her, his eyes kind and attentive. Sometimes life surprises us. You fought for this, Claire. For every little piece. She nodded, feeling a genuine emotion swell within her. For so long, I believed I had to live in pain, as if there was no other choice. But now I know I can choose. Choose happiness, choose love, choose myself. Ethan smiled, touching her hand softly. And whenever you want, I'll be here to be a part of that choice. Claire looked at him, her heart calm. There was no rush, just the comfort of knowing she was exactly where she wanted to be. Heading back inside, Claire tucked the blanket snugly around Sophie, who was breathing deeply, lost in dreams. Happy New Year, my little light. The future is ours. Standing in the living room, Claire looked out at the horizon through the window. The sky was beginning to take on pinkish hues as the first dawn of the new year slowly appeared. She felt a smile spread across her face, full of hope. She had survived what once seemed impossible. And now there, with Sophie and Ethan, she was living the life she always deserved. The past no longer defines who I am. I chose love. I chose the future. And that choice set me free.